Welcome to lecture number 9. So today we are going to discuss second order coherence theory in polarization. So before we start today's lecture, let's look at what we did in lecture number 8. So in lecture number 8, we asked the question as to what is the correlation, how to define and quantify the correlation between the fields at point or rather angle phi 1 and phi 2. And the way to define this is, suppose we have incoming field. We are interested only in looking at the field correlation at angular locations, and one way to define this angular location is by putting, let's say, an aperture in the form of a double angular slit. The location of the first slit is phi 1, or the angular position of the first slit is phi 1, angular position of the second slit is phi 2. And then we saw that this question as to what is the correlation between the fields at phi 1 or phi 2 can be answered by considering the field at some point away from this aperture, and so that the field that we collect at this aperture at any point phi will have a contribution from v of phi 1 and v of phi 2. That means the field from phi 1 and phi 2. So by combining, so the field at a point away from this aperture will be a superposition of fields from this phi 1 and phi 2. Of course, there are these geometric factors k1 and k2. And as we did in time and space, we saw that here as well, by looking at the intensity at phi at some point away, one can then find out the correlation between the fields at between phi 1 and phi 2. Okay, so that's the generic setup of the problem for investigating coherence at these 2 points, phi 1 and phi 2. So in this context, we also looked at what is the conjugate basis representation of angle or angular domain signal. And in this case, in the case of angle or angular position, we saw that the conjugate basis is OAM, that is orbital angular momentum. Then we saw that a field v of phi can be represented, and now we know that phi is actually a periodic function. That means it goes from 0 to 2 pi, then from 2 pi to 4 pi and so on. So phi angle goes from 0 to 2 pi and it's a periodic function, and that's why v of phi, a signal as a function of phi, can be represented in this form, in terms of e to the I L phi, where L goes from minus infinity to infinity. And if we write alpha L in terms of v of phi, then that's how it can be represented, where the integral is from minus pi to pi. So this basically says that v of phi and alpha L, they actually form a Fourier transform pair, but it is discrete Fourier transform in this case. So one part is a summation and the other part is an integral, but it's from minus pi to pi. So angle phi and L, they actually form Fourier transform pair, L defined by such a mode. So up until this point, it is just e to the I L phi, just a mathematical mode, but again later we saw that it can also be realized physically, and it could actually be a physical mode as well. Okay, but for now we see that the angle and orbital angular momentum, they form a conjugate pair. And then we also looked at the azimuthal correlation function defined in this form, that's v star phi 1 b phi 2. So that's the azimuthal correlation function, and this is the quantity that we are after, which quantifies the correlation in the fields at point phi 1 and phi 2. So this quantity, then we saw, can be represented by using this in this manner, where this C L1 L2, this is called the OAM correlation function, or orbital angular momentum correlation function. This is more like a two-dimensional Wiener-Khinchin theorem in the angle basis. But if we have a stationary field, then we know that for a stationary field, W phi 1 phi 2 has to depend on phi and phi 2 only through the difference, so it will be W delta phi. And with that, this equation can be written like this, that's W of delta phi is SL e to the minus IL delta phi. So that's the angular Wiener-Khinchin theorem. Okay, then in order to find the physical mode that represents or this e to the IL phi type mathematical mode, we looked at the paraxial wave equation in cylindrical coordinate, and this is the paraxial wave equation in cylindrical coordinate. We also saw that a solution to this equation is the so-called Laguerre-Gaussian mode, which is given like this. Of course, this solution is over rho, is a function of rho, phi and z, and this is a complete set of solution, and it is characterized by two indices p and l. P goes from 0 to infinity, L goes from minus infinity to infinity. And the main point is that this has a phase dependence, that's phi dependence rather, only through this term e to the minus IL phi. So the phi dependence in this mode comes only through this e to the minus IL phi. So in many situations, this e to the IL phi can actually, this mathematical mode can be simulated by this physical mode. So and then the point is that, which was shown by Allen et al., we had the reference in the last lecture, that if this is a mode, then the orbital angular momentum per photon is actually h bar L. Again, we haven't discussed the photons yet, which we will do when we come to the quantum section. But just as the information at this point, that if there is a photon, and by photon we mean h bar omega energy, if there is a photon in this mode, then the orbital angular momentum is h bar L. That means if you take such a mode, integrate it over enough volume that the total energy is h bar omega, then for that much volume, if we again find the total angular momentum, that will be h bar L. So that's what it means. And now from here, we see that this mode has this e to the minus IL phi, and this has this interpretation that the orbital angular momentum per photon in such a mode is h bar L. So from here, we say that e to the IL phi type mode basically represents the orbital angular momentum basis. So as I said, this is at this point just mathematical, but from this interpretation of this physical mode, we refer to e to the IL phi as the orbital angular momentum mode and L as the orbital angular momentum index, and thus this we always refer to as angle orbital angular momentum Fourier transform. Okay, so this is what we did last time. So now today we are going to do coherence theory, second order coherence theory in polarization. So far what we have done is just the electric field, that is a scalar. So but today we are going to do the vectorial electric field at some time t and z equal to 0. But if you just have a scalar electric field, the way we write is just e as a function of t. Of course, I am not showing z because right now I am writing it as at z equal to 0. So e as a function of t and z. So that's the scalar electric field. That's how we write it. But we know that the electric field is a vector quantity. It has certain polarization. It has a certain sense of direction in which it vibrates. So electric field always has a sense of direction in which it vibrates. So whenever we say scalar electric field, we always mean the field vibrating in a given direction. So we can also write it as e to E of t, a vectorial quantity, as E of t, Ex of t in the x direction. This shows the component of the field in the x direction, and this here is just the single direction. But in general, in electric field is a two-dimensional vector. So if we write the general electric field, it is of this form. So E of t has a component in x direction, we call it Ex E subscript x of t, and a component in y direction, which is E subscript y of t. So that's the general two-dimensional vectorial electric field that we have over here. Okay, so far we were basically asking the question actually what is the correlation between the field at point t1, t2, rho 1, rho 2, and so on. But now we can also ask this question as to what is the correlation between the field in these two different directions. So that is the question for today, is that what is the correlation between the field vibration in the two direction, and the way to represent that correlation is Ex star t and Ey t. Okay, so that is the question we are after as far as coherence theory in polarization is concerned. Okay, now we had again very similar question in time, space and angle, and the way to answer that was through this generalized scheme, that whenever we ask the question, let's say this is a Mach-Zehnder interferometer, this we use to use for addressing this question in the time domain. And here the general methodology is we take a field, we divide it into two, then we introduce a time delay in the two different arms of the field, and then we combine. So that when we have the combined field over here, it will have contributions from the fields at time t1 and the field at time t2. And then by looking at the intensity of the field here, one would be able to get the correlation between the fields at time t1 and t2. So that this has been our generic method. Now, how do we does this method generalize in the case of polarization as well, because this is a two different direction? So the answer is actually yes. So in this case, when we start with the field, we divide into two, but in the case of polarization, we don't have to divide. It is already divided. So it's one direction is Ex, the other one is Ey, and we want to find the correlation. So these are already two different directions, two separate directions that we already have. So what do we do? So this can be one interferometer for investigating the coherence, second order coherence in polarization, and answering this question. So here we have this, we start with this two field Ex, Ey. Now, as in the case of time, we introduce a delay t1 through this arm and introduce a delay t2 through this arm. So two different delays. Now an equivalent of that is we put a wave plate. A wave plate is a device that introduces different phase shifts to different polarization. So for example, for this Ex vertical polarization, it introduces a phase shift epsilon 1, and for Y polarization it introduces a phase shift epsilon 2. And then just like after introducing phase, we combine it at a beam splitter, and beam splitter is a device that splits the beam into two. So part of it goes this way, part of it goes that way. So whatever goes this way, we don't care, we just look at the field that comes over here. So the field at this point has a component from this direction and a component that comes from this direction. Now an equivalent of this in polarization is that we put a polarizer. Now polarizer is a device that lets the field pass through it only if it is oriented in a certain direction. So for example, if the polarizer is in this direction, which is from this xy axis at some angle theta, which is what we are calling x prime y prime axis. So if a polarizer is oriented along x prime, then the field polarized in this direction x prime will be able to pass through it. If a field is not polarized along x prime, if it is polarized along, let's say, x, then there is a component of the field that can actually pass through. But if the field is polarized at 90 degree to this x prime, for example is y prime, if the field is in this direction y prime, then it won't be able to go through it. So this is equivalent to this beam splitter here, and looking at it again in beam splitter, part of the field gets lost here. So in the polarizer also, we will only look at the field in the x prime direction, and the field at the y prime direction we will not look at. In fact, for a polarizer, this is equivalent to the field in y, there is no y prime direction. It's basically what actually gets absorbed or reflected. Okay, so these two schemes are very analogous. Okay, so now let's look at how we answer this question. So let's look at first what is the field at z equal to z1, where we have put our wave plate. So at z equal to z1, we can write the field, electric field, like this. So at any plane, so for example z equal to z1, the field, the vectorial field Et z1 has a component in the x direction, which we are calling Ex tz1, and a component in the y direction, which we are calling Ey tz1. Now what is Ex tz1? So Ex tz1 is the field Ext that is at z equal to 0. This field propagates up to this point z. So because of that, it picks up this phase e to the I k z1, and since there is a polarizer which introduces a phase epsilon 1 to the x polarization, so it picks up this phase e to the I epsilon 1. So Ext e to the I epsilon 1 e to the I k z1, that is the field in the x direction right after this wave plate. Similarly, this field in the y direction is Eyt, that is this Eyt is same as this, which is at z equal to 0. E to the I k z1, that's the phase acquired due to propagation up to the wave plate, and e to the I epsilon 2, that is a phase imparted by this wave plate to this polarization. So this field, when it reaches the wave plate, in fact right after the wave plate, that is the field in the x direction and the y direction. Okay. Now we want to go to plane Z2. So at Z2, similar process, if x direction, y direction, the component in x, component in y, and the component in x is just basically e to the xt, e to the I epsilon 1, which was the phase acquired here, e to the I k Z2, which is the total distance travel, similarly for y. So that's the field, that's the vectorial field at this right after the polarizer. Okay, so here we have written the field in the x and y coordinate, but the polarizer is oriented along x prime and y prime, and we want to we want to look at the field or its intensity in the x prime direction. So so for that we'll have to represent the field in the x prime and y prime direction. So how do we do that? So this is the xy, this is the x prime, y prime, and we can see from here the x, this unit vector x is basically the projection on x prime and its projection on y prime, which will be in this direction. So this cosine theta is a projection along x prime, and its sine theta, rather minus sine theta, is a projection on y prime. So this unit vector x can be written as cosine theta x prime unit vector minus sine theta y prime unit vector. Similarly, the y unit vector is sine theta x prime unit vector cosine theta y prime unit vector. So using this vector transformation, then we can write this electric field like this. So this is the x prime and that's the y prime. So here what we have done is that for x we have substituted this, for y we have substituted this, and then just collected the x prime components here, which are ext e to the epsilon 1 cosine theta, eyt e to the epsilon 2 sine theta, and that's e to the I k z2, and this is the y prime. These are the y prime components. So this is the same electric field. This is the electric field now in the x prime y prime coordinate system. Okay, so we see that this whole thing, that is the component of the field in the x prime direction, and that's the component of the field in the y prime direction. So the part of the field passing through the polarizer is then E x prime tz2, which we can write like this. Now this field, which is polarized along y prime, this will not be able to make through the polarizer. It gets absorbed or reflected from the polarizer. So that is the field that is in the x prime direction, and this, which is what we want to investigate. Okay, so this is the field in general, the vectorial field, and for this vectorial field, if we look at what goes through the polarizer, it is this component of the field, and the idea is that by looking at the intensity of the field here, we hope to be able to address this question as to what is a correlation, what is this quantity that represents a correlation between the fields in two different directions. Okay, so again let me say it again, that this is a scalar quantity. This is the field that is in this direction. So since it's just a scalar quantity, we are not we are not writing the direction here. So just that. Okay, so now as we did for time, space, angle, we will look at the energy density or the intensity that goes out of this polarizer, and the energy density is defined as E star this quantity and E of this quantity. So just the it's multiplying with this starred quantity and taking the ensemble average. So E star x prime, E x prime, and this we can simply calculate this. We put this in here. The starred quantity of this, and then the quantity itself, and if you multiply it, we see that from this one and this one, it's E star x ex cosine square theta, E star y ey ensemble sine square theta, and plus this cross terms. Now we can see that this is basically the energy density coming from x polarization. This is the intensity coming from y polarization, and that's the cross term. So we can also write this on these ensemble averages in the following manner, that Ex star, or rather E star x Ex, this ensemble average, we write as jxx. In fact, this is the energy density or the intensity of the x polarization right at z equal to 0. And this cosine square theta is the component of the field that makes through the polarizer. So if there was a polarizer was oriented along x, then the whole field will be able to pass through the polarizer. But just because it is oriented at an angle theta, it's only the jxx cosine square theta that passes through. Similarly, this E star y, Ey, that we are writing as jyy, and that is the intensity at z equal to 0 in the y polarization. And since we have a polarizer here, the amount of the intensity that is able to go through the polarizer through y polarization is jyy sine square theta, because this is 90 minus theta, and so that's sine theta. And then E star x Ey, that we are writing as jxy, and then cosine theta sine theta, and then e to the I delta, and plus the other term, that's the complex conjugate term, is just jyx cosine theta sine theta e to the minus I lambda, where lambda is epsilon minus epsilon 2 minus epsilon 1. So the energy density that we get at the output end of the polarizer is basically this. And now we see that this quantity E star x Ey, which we are writing as jxy, and this is the quantity we are after, this we can find by studying this intensity at the polarizer. So this is again very similar to what we did for time space, that we look at the intensity at this point, and by looking at the variation of the intensity at this point, we find out the correlation between the fields at T1, T2. Similarly here, by looking at the intensity or variation of the intensity at the output of the polarizer, we hope to find this quantity E star x Ey, which is the correlation between the fields in two different directions. Okay, so this is the expression for the energy density we have, and this includes this contains the energy due to the polarization one direction, energy due to the polarization in the other direction, and then of course the cross terms. So now we also define just like degree of temporal coherence, degree of spatial coherence, we can also define degree of polarization coherence, and this we do in this manner. So we write this jxy, just multiply this up and down with jxx jyy, and then this we can write this jxx jyy stays here, and this jxy divided by jxx jyy, that we are writing as jxy, small jxy. That's the normalized jxy. This jxy, then small jxy we can write as mod of jxy to the I beta xy. Now this quantity we call the degree of polarization coherence. So that's the degree, that's the modulus, that's the absolute value of the degree of polarization coherence, and that's the complex part. So this absolute value of jxy is the degree of polarization coherence. Now we can also define in terms of this jxy, we can rewrite this w x prime, that is the intensity in the x prime direction, like this. Just substituting this for jxy, just substituting this quantity. So we see that this is jxx cosine square theta, this should be jyy sine square theta, this term, this degree of coherence, polarization coherence jxy, and now we have this cosine term, cosine delta plus beta xy. So that this is the general formula for the polarization interference. This is the general formula for polarization interference, and this contains this degree of polarization coherence, and this also has this cosine term which is responsible for seeing the fringe pattern, and it varies as a function of delta, and of course beta, which is a fixed quantity here for a given field. Okay, so we can now define, just like in time and space, we can also define the visibility here. So visibility is wx prime max maximized over this delta, wx prime min minimized over this delta, and again wx prime max plus wx prime min. And this we can show that this is basically 2 cosine theta sine theta jxx jyy cosine square theta jxx sine square theta jyy jxy. Now this has a very similar, in fact this has exactly the same structure as we have for the temporal visibility. If we identify that this in this case we had this k1 and k2, these were the factors that we multiplied for the fields coming from these two directions. So if we identify this k1 as cosine theta and k2 as sine theta, then this expression is exactly same as the expression of visibility we had in the case of temporal. So there we had 2 k1 k2, the intensity x direction, intensity y direction. So if we recognize that k1 is cosine theta, k2 is sine theta, then we can write this in terms of k1 and k2. It will look like this, and this structure is same as we saw in the case of temporal visibility. Okay, so this is the visibility for polarization interference, and again we can take the special case that when this intensity coming from the first polarization, first direction, intensity contribution coming from the second polarization, if they are equal, then the visibility of polarization interference will is equal to the degree of polarization coherence. Okay, so that is just by looking at the visibility, then one can find the degree of polarization coherence. Okay, so so far we have looked at the polarization interference in a very analogous manner as we did interference in time, space and angle. So far it looks the polarization interference is pretty much the same as time, space and angle. So is there anything that is different in the two? In fact, there are two aspects that we have not discussed for polarization degree of freedom so far. First is for time, space and angle we discuss a conjugate basis. So time has a conjugate basis frequency, position has a conjugate basis spatial frequency, angle has a conjugate basis orbital angular momentum. So now the question is, what is the conjugate basis for polarization? Okay, so polarization is a two-dimensional vector, so x and y, and a conjugate basis, the idea of conjugate basis is if we are able to represent this basis vector as in terms of some other complete basis sets. For example, x is a position basis, it's a complete basis. Similarly, momentum is a complete basis, and when we can write x in terms of p and vice versa. So similarly here also in the case of polarization, which is a two-dimensional basis, we typically write this in xy, which is a Cartesian basis, but one can also write this in this diagonal and anti-diagonal basis, which is obtained by just rotating this xy basis by 45 degrees. So if you do that, we see this x, this polarization is x, or the x basis can be written in terms of this diagonal and anti-diagonal as 1/2 d minus a. Similarly, y can be written as 1/2 d plus a. So this diagonal and anti-diagonal basis can be seen as the conjugate basis to the xy. So this is of course not in the regular Fourier manner, but the diagonal anti-diagonal, that basis, this is also a complete basis in two-dimensional space. Xy is also a complete basis in two-dimensional space, and this x, y and dA, they can be seen as conjugate to each other. We can have other bases as well. For example, we can have right circularly polarized bases, left circularly polarized, those are also conjugate to xy. Okay, so that is the concept of conjugate basis here. Now the other concept we haven't discussed here is, can there be a polarization angle, just like we had coherence time, coherence area, can we have a polarization angle here? Now the concept of width or standard deviation, that applies to a high dimensional basis or infinite dimensional basis. For example, position is an infinite dimensional basis, momentum is an infinite dimensional basis. But even if it's a very high dimensional basis, one can still define high dimensional basis, or just a discrete basis, one can still define a width. But for a two-dimensional basis, if you just two numbers, then one cannot define a width. So this concept polarization angle, that is not applicable here as it is in the case of time and space, but the concept of conjugate basis, we definitely can have it over here. Okay, so I will stop here. Thank you.